Hey everyone, thanks for joining us for our very first, the inaugural episode of Lessons of the Woods by 10 Point Whitetails. I'll be your host, Dillan Porter, and this is
Kyle Weber.
And so we're going to talk about a whole bunch of stuff, but we do want to let you know this episode is sponsored by This episode is sponsored by Wall Hanger Taxidermy from Cable, Wisconsin. Big shout out to those guys. Thank you for sponsoring us for our very first episode.
Yep, and all the great taxidermy.
Yeah, he's done a lot of nice work. Are these kids here? One of them, hopefully, both of them. Be cooler if they were.
These two are. This one is not.
Awesome. So you can see great work right here. Wall Hanger Taxidermy. So who are we, Kyle? What are we doing here?
We are trying to do a podcast, but we are 10 Point Whitetail. We are
not 100% sure what we're doing yet, but we're going to get there. So
camera shy. We're camera shy.
Camera shy. It's going to take some warming up, but we'll get there.
Yes.
Yep. It's easier to talk and not have our faces seen because then we can say whatever we want.
Right.
But we'll see. Well, I mean, not whatever we want. Obviously, it has to be within the realm of the internet. But, so, who am I? We'll start there. So, my name is Dillan Porter. My dad is Steve Porter of Steve Porter's Trophy Whitetails. I grew up raising whitetails. So, I bring a very unique perspective to the whitetail world. I literally spent every day with whitetails from as soon as I could walk. Dad would have me helping bottle feed fawns, doing stuff with the does, sometimes some stuff with the bucks, looking for shed antlers, feeding the deer, that type of thing. So from maybe 3-4 years old, I would be with whitetail deer at some point during the day. From that age until 16 is when I actually took over management of the farm. And I was in charge of roughly 100 head of whitetails on 160 acres until I was 22 or 23 is when I took a step back seat, and then my younger brother took over. So I have that experience with whitetail deer. And then I've also been hunting. I think I shot my first deer with Dad between the ages of 8 and 10. And I think I was in the stand at 2 years old. I have vague memories of Dad actually taking a seat from a swing set, a kid's seat, and pulling me up into the tree stand with that. So it's always been in the woods, always been hunting.
First deer hunting safety harness.
Yep, exactly. I think he actually hung it too. He just pulled me up, tied it off on a branch, and I sat there. I don't remember if we saw anything. I was little, but
right.
There is footage that exists of some of my early hunts somewhere. Yep. And he actually had me. I think I recorded him shooting a deer. My first quote unquote guiding experience when I was 6. I think I recorded him shooting a spike buck.
Wow.
Yeah, I do have that footage somewhere.
Starting extremely young.
Yeah, way young. So I grew up in whitetails, shot my first buck with my bow when I was 12, shot a couple of does, shot many deer with a rifle. Nothing huge. I mean, I did all right. Not as nice as what you got here, but I've done all right.
And where was that?
First buck I shot, or the biggest buck I shot, was on a drive where you push the woods. So we went over to near Hallock, Minnesota. My cousins owned some river woods. It was roughly, I think it was a half-mile section where we were going to push, and I got to be one of the posters. They like to have the younger kids post if they could.
Sure.
And I was 14 at the time, I think, maybe 13. And they're pushing the woods towards me, and my older cousin, I think he was maybe 20 at the time, he had a shotgun. That area had been a slug zone previously. So they were still transitioning to rifles, but they had just changed the law that year so we could use rifles. So I had my 270, he had a 12-gauge slug gun. And suddenly I hear him just unloading, shooting like crazy. I mean, 5 shots, they all sounded like hits.
Oh, okay.
And I knew what he was shooting at. If it was still alive, that's the direction they were going to come past me. They set him up a little bit closer because you're limited to 100 yards with a slug gun.
Yeah.
Maybe not even that with a 12 gauge.
I've never experienced shotgun hunting here.
Okay.
When I started, it was rifle. So I've never. I don't know the limitations. Muzzleloader, sure.
Yeah.
But I would say 100 yards on with a muzzleloader.
I think that's pushing it with a shotgun.
Okay.
Well, at least at that time. I
Sure.
know technology's changed extravagantly since then.
Yeah.
So the buck, I see this buck coming running towards me. And I've been raising whitetails. I had a rough idea how big deer are. And I'm like, that's a pretty big deer. At first glance, I told Dad it looks just like our buck redwood. And redwood that year was 160 inches. And I'm like, looks, I mean, identical, just as wide. I'm like, it's a big deer. So the buck comes running. I briefly see him, then he disappears. And then he comes straight towards me. At first sight, running straight at me, 30 yards. With a 270, with a Leopold scope. Not going well already. And I'm 14. So I think I emptied the gun, which is a total of 5 shots. If I had one in the chamber, 5 shots. Empty the gun. At least 2 shots while he's running at me. He runs within 5 feet of me. No joke. I could have reached out and stabbed him better than I could have hit him with a rifle. So then he turns and runs past. I think I take my last one or 2 shots, and he's gone in the river brush. But there's blood. There was blood. I hit him in the foot. Like, the front foot.
Okay.
No less, and I got this little bit of skin right here.
Sure.
But he was bleeding. I drew blood. They come up, and they're like, oh, what'd you see? What'd you shoot? And I'm like, oh, I saw a big buck. Big buck. Looked just like a redwood. Dad's like, yeah, whatever. Sure. And then my cousin comes over. He says, no, it's a big buck. And he's like,
he just unloaded on him.
He just unloaded
Sure.
him. He's like, oh, I think I got him. And we go look where he'd shot. No blood. 5 slug holes in a tree. Because the buck was standing when he took his shots. And he missed all of them. I mean, a little bit farther shot than maybe you should be taking with a shotgun. But, I mean, big buck like that, you got to see what you can do, you know?
Yep.
So we go start trailing. We jump the buck. Dad sees him. Yeah, he's like, yep, he's that big. Buck took off running, went back the other way through the whole. We just pushed the woods, probably I think from north to south. Buck turned around and ran back north, and he ends up swimming the river into North Dakota. We can't hunt in North Dakota,
Right.
you know. And somebody saw him swim the river. We see a lady sitting in a tree stand on the other side, and she says, "No, what big buck just swam the river? Just saw him, but he's over here." We're like, "Oh, shoot!" But we knew I hit him, so we went back the next. We went out the next morning. Looking for him, looking for blood, whatever, trying to find him. And we come up on that piece of property on the other side, just driving down the gravel road, and they're pulling the buck out of the woods. So they got a crew together and pushed the woods and shot him.
Yep.
And the guy who shot him was the owner of the bar in Drayton, Minnesota, or Drayton, North Dakota. I don't remember what the name of the bar is, so forgive me. And he thought he wanted to hang it up in the bar. And it was big deer. Biggest deer I've never shot one that big since. Dad asked, said, hey, this is my kid's first deer. He just shot it. There are bullet holes in the deer. I mean, they weren't. He would have lived just fine.
Yep.
I was using lead tips. I should have been using ballistic tips at that. Because then I would probably, blew the throat out or something.
Sure.
But the nerves get to you. I mean, they really do. Even as much time as I spent around whitetails, I was all over the place, So, yeah, he took off, ran past me, swam the river. They shot him the next day, and the guy was nice enough to give him to me. So I ended up with the buck, and he was 158 inches.
So the guy from North Dakota, people from North Dakota are a lot nicer than Minnesota people.
I don't know if I go that far.
A lot nicer than Wisconsin.
Well, Minnesota nice is a thing for a reason.
Sure.
So yeah, I am from the northwest Minnesota area. That's where I've done all my hunting. That's where my dad's farm is. Been hunting 20, probably close to 20 years. Yeah, about 20 years right now. And 20-some years of experience with raising whitetails.
Yep.
So that's my history. Where are you at?
So, northern Wisconsin, but almost as north as you can go without hitting Lake Superior. Grew up in the general area from Bayfield to Cable. Hunted kind of all of them spaces. I didn't get quite as much of an early start as you did.
Okay.
Deer season, gun season was more man camp, and you had to be a certain age to just be able to go enjoy that with your brothers and fathers and stuff like that. So
yeah, that makes sense.
I was 12, and I would go sit with Dad in the truck. And he would go sit in the morning, came back home, picked me up, and we went and sat in the truck for the evening set. And I remember my mom was all excited I was going hunting finally at 12 with my dad. Even though I wasn't hunting, I was going with.
Yeah.
And I went to the store and bought a bleat call and a grunt call and rattling antlers, and I bought all this stuff to go.
Yeah.
And so now we're out in the woods. I'm with my dad. We're sitting in the truck. We're sitting outside the truck just kind of watching these 2 runways. And this deer runs across the road, or across the runway, a couple hundred yards ahead, and goes from right to left. And my dad tried to get a shot, couldn't get it, whatever. And I remember telling him, like, use my bleat call. My dad's old school. That ain't going to work. That doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
But I was like, try it. So he hits this bleat call, and it's those cans. Those bleat in a can. He hits it 3 times. Meh, meh, meh. 5 minutes come by. Here's that buck's at about 50 yards on the other row, on the other cutway. He turns. Now we're ready because we're, like, watching.
Yeah.
Boom! Shoots it. Deer drops right there. It was a nice little 8-pointer.
Okay.
Northern Wisconsin, depending on where you're hunting, a nice 8-pointer can be really small, or a nice deer can be really big. But it was a nice little 8-pointer, and I was hooked. Immediately, that was the most exciting thing I've ever done. Super hooked. Did the same. I don't think we got anything at 13, but at 14, I finally got to hunt.
Okay.
I shot my first buck. My brother and my dad did all the work, put me in a ground blind, and at that time, you had to hunt with your parent or somebody over 18.
Yeah.
Opening day of gun season, we're there in the dark. Me and my dad go and we sit in this blind, and I fall asleep.
Okay, yeah, that happens.
So I'm sleeping, and I wake up. And I look at, we can bait there. So we could bait at that time. We still can, but I look up at the corn pile, and all I can see is this 8-pointer head in the corn.
Oh.
I look over at my dad, and I tap him on the leg, and he's sleeping.
4 eyes, but none of them are open.
Right. So then he wakes up and goes, "What?" And I'm like, "Shh." And I'm trying to, like, hand motion, buck. And he goes, "Well, shoot it." 243 up. I think it's my sister-in-law's gun at that point. 243, and I was like, I can't see it. I can't see the body. He goes, "Shoot in the neck." I can't hold the gun up. I'm shaking. Like,
oh yeah.
And so my dad reaches over and holds the gun up, and I put the crosshairs on the deer, right in the neck. Shoot, boom, deer drops. Walk up. It's the nicest 8-pointer that season, the season before, and bigger than the one when I was 12.
Wow.
And my brothers laugh. You're ruined. You're ruined.
Yeah.
But what it did was, it wasn't easy, but it was conveniently nice to get rewarded. A nice deer, your brothers, your dad, everybody's super excited for you. But I was hooked. It's been a passion since. I've been wild about deer hunting, deer, antlers. Lately I've expanded to Montana, elk hunting, and mule deer hunting, but whitetail, I'm all about whitetails.
Oh, yeah, they suck you in.
Yep, and everything about them is amazing in my opinion. So that started that whole process, and I worked with my brother for bow hunting. He got me hooked on bow hunting. He set up a tree stand, checked the cameras for weeks on end. There was a nice little buck coming in. We hunted it. I ended up shooting it. It was my first buck I ever shot with my bow. Remembering that moment with my brother, it's been an addiction since. Up until a couple years ago, I only hunted public land though.
And that's a whole different thing, because we grew up next to 2,000 acres of state land.
Sure.
And I've been out there a bunch of times. Dad did have his quarter, but a lot of that was fenced. So we probably had 30 acres or whatever to hunt around the outside. But having access to that 2,000 acres of state land, it was a lot of fun for bow hunting, but it tends to be overran with people, right?
Yeah, 100%. So up until I got out of college and I started really get back into bow hunting, although it's high school and sports and stuff. It's hard. But got out of college and I get a spot and have deer kind of figured out. I'd have a nice buck on camera and I'm ready to hunt and whatnot. And gun season comes and I would go from 300 photos on my camera in a week. The week before gun season, it would go down to like 20. And everything's nighttime pictures. Yeah. That's because everyone went in and set their tree stands up.
Yeah. Because everybody's got to do everything last minute, right?
Everybody's doing it last minute, and they're just getting in there, getting it done. Yeah. So I really lost a taste for gun season because of that. It wasn't worth it. The deer weren't natural and all that stuff. So last year, October of 21, we bought 94 acres. Okay. Just north of us here, kind of actually close to my first house that I had purchased 8 years ago or so. 94 acres. And I promised myself, I had done some research on habitats and setting things up, and I've gone to a couple hunting classes and stuff like that, but I promised myself I was going to create the perfect property for northern Wisconsin.
Yeah.
For my area, for my style of environment, I was going to make the perfect property and get out of this yearling, 2 year, shoot everything.
Yeah.
No big bucks. I was going to change that. People are doing it south of us in the Midwest. People are doing it in Buffalo County.
Yeah.
I was going to do it here. The day I signed that paperwork, the process just started rolling. And started making a list of projects, things I want to do, things I've learned, stuff like that. I've had a pretty good hunting career up till this point.
Mm-hmm.
I shot 170s whitetail, 11 points.
That's already better than most.
Especially up here. That deer's unheard of, and everybody found out about it, and it was a
yeah,
whole
and that
thing.
always makes it tough too.
Yeah, but I actually asked the guy for permission to hunt on this property, and that's where I shot that deer. 144, 155. There's a couple other ones. A couple of them are like that 100, 110 inch, but even that's a very respectable deer. Public.
Oh, for sure.
Or in a high pressure situation like what we have now, what we have up around us. So I've had a very good hunting career so far as it is, but pure luck. Yeah. I'd love to say that I planned that and I did that, all that, but pure luck. So buying the land, I wanted to have 100% control of everything that happens, and it's been a busy year, but we've done so many things, and it's already shown some growth on that part of it. So
and we'll discuss that more in our next episode.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
I think that's what we're planning.
Yep.
But for now, what are our goals with this podcast? I mean, what are we hoping to accomplish here? Are we going to just be entertainment, or are we going to try to... I think we're both talking here. We would like to teach people stuff, draw off our own experience and hopefully teach people or help people better their property without actually ever setting foot on it. Yeah,
so watching a lot of the podcasts out there right now, a lot of people they have the ability to focus on big ag and little patches of woods, and then people own them patches of woods, and they develop that. Well, these deer that are getting to 150, 160, 170 inches in Buffalo County and Midwestern Kansas, Ohio, all those states, they have eggs, or they have nutrients. We were just at the land today, and you commented, there's nothing.
No, it's crazy, because where I'm from, it's mostly oak woods with lots of hazelnut brush, a lot of popple trees, lots of underbrush, and then ag everywhere.
Yeah.
Like directly across from my dad's driveway, they've had, it's an 80-acre field. They've had sunflowers, they've had soybeans, they've had sugar beets one year. I don't remember what's out there this year. It might be wheat, but there's always something there. Mm-hmm. The deer can literally go a half mile in almost any direction where we're at and find food.
Sure.
But here, there's nothing. I mean, I've never looked through a woods before and I can see 100 yards.
150 until the hillside either goes up or goes down. And I think standing on our property, you could go 5 miles without hitting anything besides hay.
Yeah.
Grass.
And deer really don't care for grass.
But anything besides that, there is nothing for 5+ miles, I got to imagine.
Yeah.
And if you go north, there's ag, and the deer are better there.
Yeah.
If you go south, there's ag, and the deer are better there. But where we're at, it's really tough. 100-inch whitetail is a nice deer, and I just think that's crazy, and I don't like that. So my goal, or what I think the podcast is going to be, is we're going to be educational. I want to walk through what we've done, do's and don'ts, and what we've done differently compared to that agriculture and spotty woods at best.
Yeah.
And show everyone how in the big woods country how to set that up, where they can bed anywhere.
Yeah.
At this point, there's no food, so they can eat anywhere. It's just woody browse, and that's everywhere. Why there's no deer there, and how to make your property attractive to deer and keep them. Yeah. So last year we had one picture of a little 6-pointer before season opened, and I ended up shooting a small 8-pointer the first sit. Yeah. That was the biggest buck I had camera all winter, through the rut, through the fall. Everybody was baiting, whatnot. We're already doing better than that. I got a nice bachelor group. I got fawns. I got does. Yeah. I already have a better herd than last year.
And you made major improvements, but it's not it's not been life-changing yet. It hasn't even been there for a full year. But we're going to go more in depth into that next episode.
Yep.
So kind of, we would like to be educational. We would like to be educational and entertaining.
Yeah,
we got tons of experience between the two of us with whitetail deer. I have access to all sorts of fun footage that we may be bringing up at some point for different things. We were joking around beforehand. Green Bay Packers fan, Vikings fan. I mean, we might get into some more of that personal stuff. I don't know. That's what I thought too when I met my wife or girlfriend at the time. She is a Packers fan, so I've learned to live with it. Is what I'm saying. But I think we got some good information to share, and we have access to. I mean, in the off season, if that even exists with deer hunting, we have access to all sorts of fun. I have tons of people I know that'd be fun guests to have on a podcast. I got outfitters from around the world, really, New Zealand, Africa. Montana, Canada, and then maybe they have some fun stories to share as well.
Sure.
So we got lots of stuff we're going to try to do there. Now to the big one. We're calling ourselves 10 Point Whitetails. That is the name of our Facebook page. It's the name of our YouTube channel. Podcast is going to be Lessons of the Woods. But what is 10 Point Whitetails?
Well, 10 Point Whitetails. Our goal, I think, is to do whitetail habitat consulting. We want to be able to do everything we're doing on our property and help other people do the same setup. And it can be low impact where it's just ATV, UTV, hand rake. We're not going to go in and just clear out acres of field and plant that. It's hard work, but it's easy. It's an easy way to do that to provide food. But we're going to do low impact. We can do low impact and create a natural area based on 10 points. And that's where 10 Point Whitetails comes from, is there's 10 key things to focus on to establish that perfect habitat for these deer.
Yeah.
So, for example, the property has 0 deer. Do those 10 points, focus on those 10 points, and do the consulting. And if people want our help, want to ask us questions, we can help them. Whether it's on the podcast or in person, or if we go to the property and help them do that. We can help with our 10 points and our do's and don'ts and try to change their habitat for their deer also.
Yeah.
And the difference I like to think about is instead of just being a consulting and telling people how to set up the property, with your connections with dealers and tree stand people and manufacturers and stuff like that, seed companies, we can, one, help them do the work. If we go, hey, we think there should be a tree stand here, this is a good spot, we can provide a tree stand or a box blind, and we can put it in that place for you.
And even help them pick out maybe the best one to suit that scenario.
Sometimes a box blind isn't the end-all, be-all deal. Sometimes you need a hang-on that you can be a little more discreet with, and it's less permanent. Things change. But we can provide that blind. Yeah. We got some deals with some manufacturers to provide those blinds and order them direct, to give the client as much of a price cut and deal as we can. Seed, we're learning food plots right now. We cleared them out. We're learning food plots, but we can tip you in the right direction of what seeds work with what and what your deer need. You know, so seed, blinds, and also do the actual physical labor of building these food plots, seeding these food plots, tilling them up. Hinge cutting, doing some habitat changing where we create sanctuaries and bedding and why we do them this way. We can actually do that labor. We can actually do that work rather than just saying, hey, you should do this, and then we're out. Yeah. We can actually invest our time into that if
somebody wants us to.
Yeah. If they want to handle it themselves, we'll point them in the right direction. Yeah. If they're like, hey, we want it before next season, we don't have the time, that's where we can come in and do the full service. And hopefully, but not all of it is you just show up and hunt. Yeah. And
that's the ideal. Yeah. So from what I'm gathering, we can take and make a tailor-made plan for your personal piece of property, whether it's 10 acres or 40 acres or 300 acres. Yep. And if you want to have just you bow hunting out there, if you want 5 people rifle hunting, we can help point you in a direction that'll make your property best suit your needs and fit your goals. And then if you want us to do the work, we can do that too. We're pretty flexible, I think.
Yeah, and we're gonna try to tackle it all. I mean, it's hunting based basically. If you want to answer questions via message or on the podcast or comments on the Facebook page, we want to help.
Yeah,
we're learning on the property. We're all a year ahead now, but we're learning this whole process. We're learning what does work and what doesn't work, and if we can help someone, our client, get to their goals, whether it is enough deer to shoot for a whole family, or if it's just to shoot the nicest buck or the biggest buck, we want to help that way. And this will be the podcast, and the Facebook page will be the foundation for having access to us. We're talking a lot about the land and how to develop that and food plots and stuff, but with you if anybody knows how a deer thinks.
Yeah, and I think that's something that really has to be brought into consideration. Not only where the deer are going to be comfortable, how they think, but how do these big boys think? Because there's a lot of misconceptions out there. You can only learn so much sitting in a tree stand. Whether you sit in a tree stand all season, the amount of time you spend seeing a white-tailed deer in their natural habitat is maybe 5 minutes to 20 minutes a night, depending on when the deer come in, how they move through. If you're bow hunting and they just walk by a trail, well, that's 5 minutes of interaction with a whitetail.
Is it gun season where they're totally different during gun season?
In my scenario, or where we live, are they 300 yards away?
Yep.
How much can you learn at 300 yards?
Yes.
Where my upbringing with literally living with white-tailed deer and spending hours with them every day, I probably spent at least one summer 40 to 60 hours a week just filming white-tailed deer or trying to capture certain shots. I've guided in my dad's hunting preserve, which is a whole different ballgame, but you spend a lot of time with the white-tailed deer.
Yep.
I was telling you earlier, there's one season where I was in the tree stand every day from August 28th to October 21st. Every day but 7 days I was in the tree stand, whether it was just an evening hunt or a morning and evening hunt. And I'm watching white-tailed deer, watching them do things. I was still learning things about white-tailed deer on my last year on the farm.
Sure.
Because there's just so much to learn. There's so many unique things about their behavior. And I told you about one of them while we were hunting. So if you see a doe or a buck standing out in the field and it picks its head up real quick and looks around and then puts its head back down and wags its tail, what does that mean?
Side to side.
Side to side, little tail wag.
Yep.
Most people wouldn't know what that means. I eventually figured out that that's an all clear sign. Deer use their tail for alerting other deer, obviously. We all know white flag goes up, everybody's running.
Gone.
But if they're wagging their tail, that's an all clear sign. Or it can even be a sign of, if the deer's alone, convincing themselves it's okay.
Yep.
What I thought I saw, wasn't real.
Yep.
So there's a lot of opportunities and a lot of things that we can teach about white-tailed deer, how their brain works, what it takes to grow a big buck. From my 20 years of experience raising whitetails, there's so much that goes into growing a big buck, and it's not just food, it's not just genetics, it's not just age, it's not pressure, it's a combination of all of these things.
Personalities. You had mentioned too that depending on what deer at that point you were raising, or even when you were sitting in the stand, there's a dominant buck. Mm-hmm. That dominant buck might not have the biggest antlers.
No, but
this buck might have the biggest ones, but he's very passive. He might be on its own.
Yeah.
And that happens in the wild,
mm-hmm.
in a deer farm, in any situation, and being able to recognize that via camera videos,
mm-hmm.
your trail cameras, pictures, learning that the mannerisms of these whitetails. A buck walks out, wags his tail. You don't have to pressure or rush your shot.
No, he's comfortable.
He's telling himself he's good. They're edgy as it is, and you had said that these deer are very wound tight.
They're paranoid schizophrenics.
Yep.
Everything in a white-tailed deer's world, everything's trying to kill them.
Yep.
So we have to remember, when we go into the woods, we're going into their world.
Yes.
Where everything is a threat. I've seen deer run 100 miles an hour. Well, not really, but you know what I mean. Right, they run as fast as they can to get away from a paper bag blowing across the yard.
Yep.
Anything can scare them. Anything can be dangerous.
But they'll stand in the middle of the road when a car's coming at them 60 miles an hour.
Yeah, that one still is. I know a lot about whitetail psychology, but I don't know that one. That's a whole different ballgame.
And then another thing that's very interesting is aging whitetails.
Yeah.
What was the oldest doe you said today?
The oldest doe we've ever had on the farm, and now that's in ideal circumstances. She gets access to feed and water 24/7.
She's
no
raised,
predators,
no hunting,
no disease, no sickness. She was 22.
Sure. And oldest buck?
Oldest buck that I can remember is 13.
So being able to see those I mean, we were just talking about pictures of us in high school.
Yeah.
When those bucks grow up, their body changes. And being able to not just look at the rack, because the rack can really trick people in thinking how old these deer actually are. Being able to look at the cues that the whitetail's body provides.
Yeah.
And understanding that buck has now been skeletally fulfilled its duty and as big as it's going to be, now all that energy focuses on the rack. And that's where you get those big antler jumps.
Yeah.
So 20 years of you seeing what them old bucks look like, now you can look at a trail camera and probably tell us.
Within a year, I think I'm pretty close.
Yeah. You can say if they're 1 or 2, 3 or 4, older than 6.
There's just like there's norms within the whitetail society world. There's a certain set of norms where most deer fit into those categories. Now, I've seen yearling bucks that I would swear up and down one side are year and a half old in the wild that are fantastic.
Sure.
But they're way above their norms.
Yep.
So, I mean, that's a lot of stuff that we can discuss. I think we're just about out of time here today.
Sure. But we just covered what all of these podcasts are going to cover.
Yeah.
The property.
Yep.
Mindset of a whitetail. How to age a whitetail. How to set up for a pattern of whitetail. Setting your personal goals for it. And then additionally, what we're going to be doing. We're setting up the property, but I also want to say, I think we're going hunting.
Yeah,
next month we're going hunting, and I think we're going to film that.
Ideally,
we're going to try to do a decent show for hunting, but then also in November we're talking about going to Montana.
Potentially, I got to check my schedule on that one.
Yeah, but I mean it's so the podcast is going to be the lead for a lot of these cool things that we're going to be able to do. It's
the easiest way to keep up with us.
Yep.
Because we're going to have a lot of things going on. We got the Facebook. We're going to get this all out on YouTube.
Yep.
We'll get on podcast sites. It should be easiest available on Spotify.
Okay.
But I'm going to do some research. There's ways to get it onto Apple Podcasts. I'm not super versed with that yet, but we'll get it out there.
We have a lot. We're going to do a lot, I think.
Yeah.
And this is more of an introduction to you and me and what 10 Point's going to be, but the next couple are going to be
a little bit more informative.
More content and more information and funner, hopefully.
Yeah.
So,
well, I had fun.
Yeah. I love this. We're finally here. Lots of talking about it.
Yeah. Months of talking, figuring out what we're going to do and jumping right into it.
And we just created a bunch of stuff today, taking photos and creating content and checking the property and because season's coming.
Yeah.
So now it's time to start refocusing on 11 months of doing stuff to finally get to this point. So it's pretty exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, it is very exciting, and I think that's where we're going to close this episode. So thank you for watching or listening, depending on where you found us, and stay tuned for more. Excuse me.
If you haven't yet, like our Facebook page, 10 Point Whitetails. I think we have a TikTok. I don't think we put too much out there, but
not much yet on TikTok.
Like, follow,
subscribed on YouTube.
Share the posts.
Leave us a review on whatever podcast app you're using or Facebook or whatever. So, yeah, that helps people find us.
Yep.
So, we appreciate you guys checking us out and watching, and we'll be back shortly. I think we're going to try to release these weekly. I think that's
a good goal.
Yeah.
So, but hunting season, I might be in the tree stand. We might have to do one of these podcasts from our tree stand.
That could be interesting.
Well, if we can pull that off, we better have some.
It'd be a lot of whispering. It'd almost be like an ASMR type thing.
Yeah.
So
awesome.
All right. Well, thank you guys very much. We'll be back.